Thank you. All right, guys, welcome to our ninth episode of Blood, Sweat, and Wax. As you can tell, it's been a while, but we're glad to be back. As also you can see, we have a guest, and we're going to get right into that. But right before we do, thank you for tuning in and subscribing to us. If you're not watching live and watching this on the rewind, we are still grateful for you all. That said, let's get right into it. We have with us our guest, our role model, our guidance counselor, Joe's card Stache. Joe is an avatar of our hobby. He only means the very best. We can't speak more than that. I mean, Joe, would you mind giving a quick intro of yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been, God, I don't even know how long I've been doing this, since 21 Prizm came out. So it's like everything's in our time is judged by product. But yeah, so
Yes, it is.
since
Post
then, I mean,
Prism.
I was doing different sports at that time with my channel, and then I decided to just concentrate on UFC. I think around select that area. And yeah, I just make these videos. I work at Ruka, which is a clothing company that is very UFC adjacent, I guess. So I work with a lot of fighters and stuff like that, which is really cool. You know, it's kind of what got me into all this is that, I know some of these people. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I collected baseball cards and stuff like that when I was a kid. And this is kind of it's a nostalgia thing for me, but it's also what a sport that I wasn't into, obviously, when I was younger, that I'm really into now. So it comes together in this like perfect harmony. And like you guys, it's pretty much all I think about. It's like what I'm
Yeah.
looking at right before I go to sleep, and what I think about when I wake up, and always planning these videos and stuff like that. And I just love the community too, like all the people I've met through YouTube and stuff like that. I've never, before this, I was never someone who met people really through
Yeah.
digitally. And the amount of people that have reached out to me and talked to me and told me about their lives and stuff like that's really freaking cool. So yeah, that's me. And I'm trying to keep it going. It does get very hard to do these all the time, so I do find myself like needing to take a break here and there, which is
Yeah.
cool
Yeah.
because you kind of do it when the product slows down a little bit. So but right now, this is Prism. This is like, our
This is
Super Bowl.
it.
Not,
Yeah, 100%. And for what it's worth, Joe, I think that that story has been echoed many times from other folks that we've talked to. Like we hear that echoed a lot, is that, with Corona and everything else, right? A lot of us couldn't do anything. I certainly was not on forums meeting people and meeting up with them in person and stuff, but during COVID, um, obviously that happened, and that's how I met all these fine gentlemen here. Now we're getting a chance to actually meet in person. But yeah, a lot of people, like I think it was like the perfect storm for the
mhm.
hobby. Yeah.
Right. My first interaction with Joe was when he actually sold me something on eBay, and he slipped over some like Ruka coupons. I'm like, who does
Oh, no
this?
way.
And then uh, before I knew it, I had to get to know this person, this very modest soul. And for those people that want to tune in, and please do, I mean, we can't implore that more enough, is to subscribe to Joe's Card Stash. We'll have a link below, and his content is professionally done. It's always on point. It isn't like you have to wait 2, 3 months for him to talk about Prism. He'll talk about it readily. So please subscribe to him. We'll include the link below right after the show. That said, let's go in and go over a few things that we're going to be talking about today, and that includes UFC Prizm 2023, the massive product, the gold standard of Panini. And then we're obviously going to be talking about our gut reactions. We're going to talk about that little evil gnome. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And then aside from that, we're going to also talk about how to go about purchasing the product and to do it positively. Especially if we're in a bind or something, we want to look at it economically. And then we cannot ignore the massive fight card this weekend with UFC 288. Massive names on there. You have the return of Hickson's son. You have Burns versus Bilal Muhammad. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and start talking about Prizm 2023, guys. What's our gut reactions? What do you think about the checklist? What do you think about design? What are your thoughts?
One of you guys go.
Sure. I have not been buying too much into too many breaks for this product, so I'm not going to pretend like I know the ins and outs of everything about this product. I can tell you that when I first saw the checklist, and it almost feels like they wait until the 11th hour to release it before the FOTL gets launched. Um, I thought it was interesting, and I don't know what drives this. I don't have enough insight into the back end process for like what they're actually putting out to production. But there's some big names that I would have expected to see more cards of, like a Zhang Weili, my favorite Jan Blachowicz and stuff, but like other big names like Zhang champions, there's just not a lot of them in there. But there are a few big chases that I saw, like the Islam Color Blast, in my opinion, that's going to age well, I think. You have the Sean O'Malley Color Blasts coming back. The Hall Monitors looks pretty cool. I thought that was an interesting insert. And then a ton of rookies. So my initial reaction to the product was that, and I don't know enough about the Hasbulla following and what new interest is being kind of injected into the hobby for that specifically. But I felt like the product from a resale value, from a MSRP value, would not be as high as other Prisms. But for true collectors, fans of the UFC, I think it was going to be exactly what it needed to be, which was getting a lot of those rookie names that we've been kind of clamoring for so long, getting us access to some cards for those folks. And like we always talk about this, Joe, but it's like rookies for UFC cards. These people probably have been fighting for a few years, so it's kind of weird to call them rookies, but for all intents and purposes, they are, right? Because they're being released for the first time. So I think the product is good for collectors. I will pause there because I don't know enough about what kind of a crazy, marketing blitz is happening for the Hasbulla chases. So that's just my take on it.
Roller Joe, what are your thoughts?
Go ahead, roll.
I've never been huge on Prizm. I like 21 Prizm. It's pretty good, but 22 Prizm was a little off put by 22 Prizm with the centering and the checklist and everything. 23 Prizm with the color blasts. You guys know me. I'm a huge GSP guy, so I was really excited about that. And with the Hall Monitors, GSP, they added them to a lot of sets this year. So I'm really happy with the checklist as far as that goes. I like to see a lot of the new rookies. Or not new rookies, but the people that have been fighting for a few years, as we were talking about before, Jiho. I'm glad that they gave these other fighters some chances to have their cards. I think it was time, especially with 23 Prizm being the first set of the year. So I'm a fan. I mean, I broke a lot of it and haven't had great luck with it, but it seems to be a pretty good set. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, everything you guys said. I mean, it's it is the first. The fact that it's the first product of the year is really what kind of makes it what it is. I mean, I don't think it also has a lot of like stuff with basketball that, like the early versions in basketball are just huge. Like, they're very like high up in the realm of like really cool cards that people want to collect. And that's what they're going for with UFC. And I think that's kind of what influences me with it. It's the fact that you get to see it first. And, I don't think it has the greatest autos. I don't think, I'm actually not a big fan of like the color blast that much, to be honest.
The farting. Yeah.
Dude.
Well, I can't see it now, Joe.
Once parts. I saw that, like I thought it was just the Islam, but like I just saw the Conor McGregor and it just looks like everybody walking away from like a rainbow fart cloud that they just let off. Yeah. And like ever since I saw that, I'm like, plus, I mean, I think they're dope cards, but if you get one, you can sell it for $1,000 instantly. And I'm going to do that all day and buy some, old Topps cards that I want,
100%.
It's just not something that like I think is worth. Same thing with the Hasbulla card. I mean, I was hoping for one just so I could buy something I actually like. But all in all, like that's what's kind of crazy about the Hasbulla thing is like I think they added more rookies to this. I feel like it feels like there's a ton of rookies. Like every other card is a rookie. It almost feels like kind of like Select in that way. And then. A lot of them are really, really good up and coming fighters that have, very few losses. Some of them are undefeated and no one's talking about any of them. Maybe Bo Nickel a little bit, but like,
Makayev and stuff. And
I filmed this video that I was talking about the Hasbulla thing. And this is what really kind of when they first announced that Hasbulla was going to have a card in here, my initial reaction was, that's awesome. That's going to bring so many people in. And it did. I mean, I've seen people breaking this that never break UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good thing. The more people that are in this hobby, it's going to drive prices up. It's, but what bothered me is I watched a break, and this was only a couple days ago, and it was somebody who didn't know UFC that well. And he pulled Muhammad Makayev Mojo. And I mean, that's a
big card.
Yeah.
That's a big card.
He pulls that, and he obviously knows cards, so he knows it's a rookie Mojo. So he gets excited. He's wow, this is a big card. But then he notices behind it there was a Hasbulla silver, just a silver. And he acted like he just pulled the biggest one of one in the history. Like,
are you talking about the breaker?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's just screaming his head off, and that's when I really had this moment. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, this dude is like basically, a meme, and I'm like,
the mascot,
fight, and you have this person who's like a really amazing up and coming fighter, and he's just thrown aside. I think he literally just threw the Mojo aside, and I was like,
oh, that's okay, so sad.
This is getting a little weird, and then seeing the prices. I mean, I've at first, most of the eBay prices I saw, I'm like, these are pumped. I'm like, these aren't getting paid for. There's no way people are spending $25,000 on this dude's card. And that one was not paid for, I found out. So certain things haven't been paid for, but there is an official like eBay sale of one of his golds for $10,000. So somebody,
there's a big market in the East, in like the Mid East and stuff for Hasbulla and Khabib and everything. Yeah, but I mean, to your point, and I hope I'm not interrupting, Joe.
No. I ramble. You guys jump in.
No. Look, I noticed a lot of people, and again, I'm kind of like a spectator to all of this because I have not bought any 23 Prizm. I'm gonna go after the singles that I like because of what you said, which is a lot of people are breaking the product that are probably not big fans of some of these rookies, and they're going to be selling them for pennies on eBay.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be picking up the guys that I want because of that. But and this goes back to like, are chases like Hasbulla and things of that nature and marketing, like, little campaigns and sort of promotional things like that, good for the hobby? I think they are. And I noticed when Hasbulla was announced, there was a lot of hate online for that. And you guys might have seen that from like the old guard, right, of the UFC cards and stuff. But to your point, for this hobby to be like a healthy ecosystem, the market needs more people coming in.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be people leaving, but you can't have just people leaving, right? You need to have new interest coming in, and whatever helps to move that needle, I think, is good. And people will say like, well, you shouldn't care just about the prices if you're collecting. That's not true. That's not true of anything, right? Like, we want there to be some value to these things, right? Otherwise we're crazy. But I think like seeing all of these people breaking it that have not broke it before, never cared about the product, all of a sudden they care about it. Yeah, it feels a little disingenuous, but I think like on aggregate, as long as it brings new people in, it's good. Now, I'll say that with one caveat, which is if it brings people in that have never broke UFC and they're getting, like, to your point, these people don't know what they're opening or what they're looking at, and these people are screaming their heads off thinking that these people are getting cards that are worth hundreds of dollars, and that's their introduction to the hobby, and they go and try to sell a single and it sells for $5 because no one was looking at it on a Sunday, they're going to have a bad taste in their mouth. Are they going to stay?
Yeah.
And the way that you make it sticky for people is you need to have, and I don't want, maybe it's too early to segue into like how you actually open this product in a good manner, right? But people need to get a lot of value back when they enter breaks. It cannot just be gambling for the sake of gambling. There has to be value back. And when there's value back, people actually take interest into their individual singles enough where they look up these fighters. And that's how I learned about Adrian Yanez. Was like Chicken pulled a big one for me, and I was like, I've never heard of this guy. I'm embarrassed to admit it. And then I started watching his fights and I fell in love with them. I have Fight Pass. I always do this, right? And like Muhammad Makayev, maybe they never heard of him. He's got the mojo, he gets it, he looks it up, and you want that, right? And people will kind of, it'll grow on them that way, I think. But yeah, only if they don't leave feeling burned every single time. So Jiho, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So we're in an interesting predicament if we're talking about the hobby itself, because if you look at the architecture of this sort of product, the sports marketing product, we're in a situation where we have athletes competing maybe 2 to 3 times a year, right? It's not much. And if they lose, especially if a person were to just buy that person out, like, and just be invested into them, their value drops significantly. And because of that, we like need, unfortunately, people like Hasbullah. We need people like the refs. We need people more of the personality of the UFC because they are the evergreen resource, if you will, that keep the people interested. I mean, there's always been a talk, when are we going to see a Dana White card again, aside from Tops?
Yeah.
When are we see a Joe Rogan card, for that matter? So unlike other sports where the Dallas Mavericks may lose a game, you'll always have fans of the Dallas Mavericks. However, for because it's only year 3 of Panini, and Topps didn't do such an excellent job in terms of its own marketing to look into prospects and look into getting more of a new fan base. We're going to see how well this product actually does move forward. I mean, I think it was brilliant for Panini to actually increase the number of rookies this year as opposed to last year. And we're actually looking at great ones at that. I mean, we have a number of rookies like Renat, for example. We have Mahad. We have Aliaskab, a well, his name alone, Black Wolf. I mean, he is a dark horse. We have Tabitha Ricci. We have Norma. Enough said. So, pretty stoked.
Blanchfield
As well. Yeah, the EBI killer.
Yeah. Real quick, I had a few things I marked down that I did like about Prizm, and I'll just rifle them off. One thing you mentioned, I think Turnit and Roll 2, the hall monitors, which I didn't know what that was going to look like. They didn't show any photos of it. And I've heard a lot of people actually don't like those cards, but they kind of remind me of kind of older Topps cards, the way they do black and white. And
I like it.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have seen the gold versions of it where the whole back is gold.
Yeah, I have.
They're so sick. I want those super bad.
Yo, they remind me of Top of the Class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Top of the Class, or they remind me of like this golden ticket you find in a chocolate bar. Like regal.
Yeah.
Looks real nice. Yeah, I can't agree with you more on that.
So I like the blue waves, which they added this year. They're not numbered, but I like those. What else? I mean, I've always loved Mojos and Teals. Jamal Hill's auto, where he puts SD in the middle of it. I love anybody who signs something a little interesting, and that's his first auto. So that's a really sick one. Like Joe Pfeiffer's card. He has a documentary coming out. I don't know if you guys saw that. He was on.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Ariel Hawani today talking about this documentary about him, and it looks he's had a crazy life.
Yeah.
So
is that the one where Dana helped him out a little bit?
I think so. So I pulled my FOTL box. I pulled a red Joe Pfeiffer card, and some guy hit me up and he's like, "Look, I'm friends with him. Will you sell it to me?"
Wow.
And he told me that yesterday. He's like, "Yeah, there's this documentary coming out. You have to see it." And then I saw he was on Ariel today, and I was like, "That's weird. He was on it like a week ago. Why is he back on?" It was all about this documentary, and he goes into what he's gone through in his life, and you're just like, "Whoa!" So that's a really cool one. I like, so I think he's going to have some hype around him just, anytime you have something that kind of like leads you into these people's real lives. And what else? I always hate hypers. Those really bother me. I mentioned the color blast thing. Serial numbers being down. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the Reds.
Did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of the serial numbers are lower, which means they lowered print runs, which is pretty cool. And the fact that box prices almost immediately went up and are sold out kind of everywhere. So that's a really good sign. I think they priced it right. Hasbullah really does have a big part of this. So, you do have to think that that's a big part of it, and it is a good thing. But at the same time, I think as time goes on and, who knows what he's going to be in 5-10 years, people aren't going to be buying those boxes for them. They're going to be buying it for the champs that are probably guys you've named. And that's what, is same thing in every other sport. It's like the rookie class is going to carry this. And, over time, most of the rookies are going to become, just not very good, but you're going to have one or two people that are going to be multi-champs. And, those are the good people that, 5 years ago, it's like, or, 5 years from now, you're going to be buying these boxes for that reason.
And I think that's the predicament that the UFC is in, is like, we'll have a number of talented fighters, right? But we only have one stage to show them in, right? We don't have like a UFC B show. I mean, we do have the Contender Series where they all like basically farm out people, but We don't have like the UFC to WEC, which would be great to have because you have more competitive fights, you have more ways to actually look at these rookies and whatever else.
Yeah. I I like what you pointed out, Joe, around the rookie classes, because the rookies the rookies that are in this product, it's not like you're coming from college to the NFL draft and you're unproven. They've proven something to be in the UFC to begin with, for the most part, right? Um, so they're not going to be all kind of they're not all going to like just lose and fizzle out and be gone too fast, because with the ESPN deal, there's way more UFC fight nights than ever before. Every week, pretty much, you're guaranteed to have the UFC on, which I think is good for consumers and the audience in general and getting to know the sport. Like, even if you're not, if you're a casual fan, and I don't say that in a negative way, it's just if you're only paying attention to the big pay-per-views, then you may not see all of the big rookies come up until they're actually ranked, right? But with all these fight nights, like how many times like Royal Jiho do we get on a call and we're talking about a fight night that's not really hyped up, but there's a lot of big names from a rookie class perspective that are there, and those fights are free for all intents and purposes, right? So I think
Mhm.
that's good. And I look back at like 21, big rookies there, the obvious names. You got Yuri Moreno, Cyril Gane's there. I still believe in him. You have Hamzat, of course. 22, I still think has a very healthy rookie class, even though a lot of those names have kind of fallen off a little bit. This next one for 23 is going to be nice. So I do think like we have the product will hold its own over time. It just requires a little bit more patience to see how it ages, for the demand to really go up. I also think what's interesting about collecting UFC is that from just a collector standpoint, we don't have games every other day like in baseball or basketball or football. And some people might say, okay, that's bad because it doesn't drive during the season a lot of interest, right? Because you like if your player plays really well, you can offload some cards. It helps with liquidity. But I think if you're just starting out, the UFC card hobby is a great place to start because you don't feel like you have to make day-to-day decisions.
Hmm.
You can think about, what do I want to
True.
collect? Why do I want to collect it? I can negotiate some trades. Like, my fighter is not fighting for a few more months. So like it may not have the ebb and flow liquidity that comes from like day-to-day sports events happening week to week, whatever. But I think that's actually a good thing for people that are starting out.
All solid points. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
liquidity.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
liquidity in like the current products always comes with rookies because a lot of
Yeah.
people are looking to buy it and they're in that market currently. But I think like if we do an experiment with tops, like look at the boxes that we're breaking with tops. Look at the biggest boxes. The people in those boxes that we're looking for are like the legends, the people that have made a difference in the sport. So
Right.
they're like Joe said, there's going to be the rookies that fizzle out, and a lot of those will be uh a lot of those won't be great fighters in years to come, and some of them may be dropped from the UFC. But there's going to be those one or two maybe from each year if they're lucky. I mean, we find like one great here and
Yeah.
there. It
True.
may
Yeah.
take 5 years, and we find one person out of the 5 year rookie classes that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
actually fizzles out and becomes like champ and just hold a long-standing champ. Or we could see what happens with the like what we've seen with the I call it the Charles Oliveira effect. He may lose a bunch of
Yes.
fights, and it's the person that you least expect to become champion,
Mhm.
and
And
he
all of a
Oh
becomes
sudden,
yeah.
champ, and his card prices go up.
yep.
So that's something that can also happen. Another point, Joe. I wanted to get to this. I know you mentioned hypers and hating hypers. I also hate hypers. I think hypers are the worst thing that's ever happened to Prism, especially because it's a mojo tease.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
nothing worse than going through a pack and seeing
Mhm.
a hyper and thinking you have a mojo, and then immediately being just crushed. But and
That's
along
putting it
with that,
lightly.
yeah, with Prism, I wish they would bring back the neon greens. I loved the
Yeah,
neon greens.
those are so
Hmm.
great. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
do
they're
like
such a
those.
great card.
You mean this Grant Hill Sprite Green? Yeah,
The
I
what?
agree with you. The Grant Hill Sprite. I'm dating myself right now. Screw it.
Yeah,
But you know what is also great? Happens to be, as the Goebbels pointed out, the Blue Wave.
Yeah, the
yeah,
blue loads
I'm a
look
fan.
really good. Yeah, and
Um,
it's funny. I got connected with Market Movers recently, which is a data mining
Oh,
program,
yeah. Yeah.
and I hit them up just because I was like, you know what, I'm deep into UFC cards, and you guys have a pretty good like. There's someone there that really likes UFC cards that has been like inputting a good amount of the rookies and big fighters into their database. And I was like, I'd love to mess with this just because I'm like a data nerd and I'm really interested in this. So they sent me one so I could play with it and kind of look into it. And the one thing I realized, you can do all these comparisons of like cards that if you buy them raw and then get them graded, you can see where the biggest jump is in price. And in 2022 Prizm, the cards that you want to buy that are the most like cheapest to buy but will go up crazily if you get a PSA 10 is the Ruby Wave, which is crazy.
Yes,
Like
I believe it.
they're not numbered or anything, but everyone's selling them like for nothing. And then when you get them graded, people think, you know, it's red, it's shiny, it's cool. So it's like, you start realizing stuff like that, like, you know, these kind of weird
I
little
call them
cards
market
you wouldn't think much
inefficiencies.
of can be, you know, where to go.
There's-
Whereas, you know, like you know, an octagon or something like that. I mean, the price is so high to get in that it's like, even if you get a good grade and you know, it's really high to buy this because they're only out of 8, you know, they're really short numbered stuff.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I'm with you.
plateaued, I feel like, with that price point.
Yeah.
Whereas like you can buy a cheap card, especially in fighters like Shavkat or Umar, like rookies, and you can get a red wave or some like Blue Velocity, for example, from Optic. You can get something like that and send that in and grade that. You get that card for $1 and you can send it in, grade it, and get a 10, and you can, you know, potentially make a good amount of money off of it,
100%.
you know, percentage wise.
Yeah,
100%.
no, it's, you know, we're not talking giant flips here, but it's like small stuff. And, you know, that's really, you know, and it's one reason I love your guys' show when I first started watching it, because you guys are really going into like the economics of all this, which I just find fascinating, you know, like it really is interesting to me. And like you guys were just talking about with rookie classes and stuff, like I started getting into tops and watching boxes of 2018 tops or 2019 tops. You know, you look at those rookies, it's just, you know, 2019, it's 2018, it's just, you know, basically Sean O'Malley. You know, you have Darren Till, you have all these other people that have all fallen off, but the big cards you want there now are like Conor McGregor, Habib, you know, like those are the guys, because you do realize that, you know, most of these guys are not going to become all timers. But that's the cool thing about UFC is, you know, people have such a connection with some of these fighters that, you know, some people are just, even if they never became champ, they were such a fan favorite that they hold value all the way through.
100%. 100%. And there's a lot of national pride attached to this. That's how I got into all of this. And then to your point about some of these other cards and like the discrepancy between the prices that some of these things are going for, and then once you get it graded, you can sell it for a lot more. I think what people maybe don't realize, because it hasn't hit UFC as much yet, is pop reports. And they don't matter as much yet to the UFC card community, but it's been something that I've cared about since day one. If like, raise of hands, not literally, but 22 Prizm, how much quality control issues were there? Does anybody actually think the quality was great in 22 Prizm? I don't.
No.
A lot of damage, off centering. I still love a lot of those rookie cards, don't get me wrong, but what that told me was, if you can find the diamonds in the rough for centering, for, you know, edges and all that kind of surface wear, for like an Umar Silver, like I think I picked up like 5 or 7 Umar Silvers and Hypers and Ruby Waves.
I did
for
too.
like $15 or something. It was like a lot that nobody cared about, and like 3 or 4 of those came back as PSA 10s, which more than like pays. One of those more than pays for that, right? But if you look at the pop reports for these PSA 10s for Prizm, they're low. So I can totally understand why somebody would go, hey, I want to buy that Ruby Wave PSA 10 for that rookie because I may not afford the Octo. But I think like over time, if that rookie continues to perform and becomes a legend, like that pop report's not going to get much better. I promise you.
I want to show you guys something. This is a watched item reminder from eBay. I'm watching a
Ooh. I know the picture before it even came in focus.
We already know
nice.
it's Umar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Umar Silver and Umar Green from retail in my grading pile right now just because of that. They're cheap cards that you can turn into, you know, good profit, or you could even grade them. And if you have PSA 10, you know, pop 1 or pop 2 or whatever low pop cards, you know, if you hold on to them, they're probably not going to be printed as well the next run. So, you know, for 22 specifically, I mean, it's a good deal if you pick up cards for super cheap. I think I got that Umar for less than $5, that green retail Prizm, and silver probably collectively for less than $5.
Yeah.
If they come back 10s, I mean, easily 50 at least, I would say.
And not to like go down another rabbit hole here, but I do think it's important. And Joe, you mentioned like the economics of stuff, right? Like this, I didn't think the market would go further down months ago. I thought we had kind of bottomed out. We're seeing that it's got room to go, like with the banking crisis and macro variables and stuff like that. But right now you see like there's this flight to quality, which is kind of what naturally you would end up seeing anyway over time, which is people are picking like, which fighters do I want? Who do I collect? Let me try to get the very best card that I can for those fighters. I think people are still a little bit hesitant. Like for some of these, like I saw a 101 Topps Connor, 101 John Jones auto from Topps, or it might have been not an auto, but it was Bloodlines or something like that. These cards are going for a little over 1,000, which is a lot of money, but it's nowhere near where I thought they would go back in the heyday, like a few years ago, right? In the top of things, right? So people want these cards. There's a lot of watchers, there's a lot of views, but people are scared to be putting their money in for some of these grail pieces. I think that there's a lot of these 101s that I haven't seen on the market all of a sudden coming out. So I think the right now, if you're a collector, this is an amazing time. And to your point, Joe, again, and to your point, Roll, it's if you actually love prospecting, there's no better time to do it, because a lot of these cards are falling under the radar for Umar, for a lot of these other guys, even Shafkat, like these Ruby waves and stuff. But we're seeing there's a market for them when they're graded. So I don't think the hobby's dead by any stretch of the imagination from a market perspective. It's just adjusting itself to value. And that's long term, it's a healthy thing. But I don't think it's a good idea for people to completely shut it down, because there's a lot of great opportunities still.
Sure.
Yeah.
Since we're already talking about the economy, or talking about price points, liquidity, and Adam Smith, I figured let's go ahead and talk about buying the product. We obviously know we could purchase it through boxes and breaks. What are your takes on that, especially for people getting into the hobby, and we just don't want to shun them away? What are some ways that we could help in terms of like providing those recommendations, and whether it's from painful experience or hypotheses, what are your thoughts? And I'll turn it over to whoever wants to talk first.
Personally,
Roll.
Go ahead, Joe. If you
No, I was voting for you to talk.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I if I do a break, I prefer to do a Percy. If I have the money, I want to do a Percy. I want to take the whole box down by myself. But if I'm going to do a break, I want to do a divisional. And that's just my personal opinion. I think with Pick Your Fighters, you have to be careful, because if we look at how many fighters are in the set, these fighters are priced at the prices of these fighters. These breakers are making a large margin for the most part. And I'm not speaking for everybody, but in some of these whatnot breaks, you have to be careful where you're buying these fighters. Not everybody starts them at $1. People have all of their fighters priced differently. Like one day, actually, when Prizm 23 dropped, there was a fighter. I forget who it was, but it was $150 on one break and like $65 on another break. And it just shows like some
Just
people are
rares,
looking for more money, and it can be more hidden in those Pick Your Fighters. So if you're doing a Pick Your Fighter break, be careful on what you're spending money on. But yeah, divvies all the way. I'm a divisional guy. If I'm going to do a break, I want a division or I want a box to myself.
Yeah.
And you guys could probably speak to this more than me, because you're more involved in whatnot, but I definitely noticed it, and it was a really weird shift in that, like, when I used to buy into breaks, I haven't bought into breaks this year. I've shunned them off. It was like a big
nice.
What's it called? I just made some rules for myself this year, and that was one of them,
good.
because I looked and saw that was easily how I lost the most money last year. But when I used to buy into breaks, I would do eBay breaks that were, sold on eBay. They were Pick Your Fighter breaks, but they were scheduled. You'd watch them on YouTube, and it was, whatever set boxes, 3 boxes. You couldn't sit there for 8 hours just running a credit card up. And I liked that part about it. But it was Pick Your Fighter, and I liked, diving into the checklist and like, oh, okay, this guy has this many parallels. It's better to buy him because you can hit harder with him, and he's underpriced because he's not fighting, stuff like that. I thought it was kind of cool the way you could pick things. But then I noticed when Whatnot came out, and I was watching, certain guys that you see all over Instagram that are doing these every night case breaks, that crazy. But I noticed almost, overnight, they all switch from divisional breaks to Pick Your Fighter breaks. And when I see stuff like that, like, I just think of casinos. I think of anywhere where all of a sudden everybody's doing the same thing, and you're like, they figured something out. Like the house,
it's always there's always
smarter.
one reason. There's always one reason, Joe. And this is what my dad always talked about at morning coffee with my mom, and all my brothers and I had to listen to this. If you don't know what it's about money.
Exactly.
And yeah, and like, again, I'm sorry to cut you off, Joe, if
No,
that's
no,
okay,
go
but
ahead.
I think it's a good segue. It's like, I think about the hobby at a
Jiho.
macro.
Jiho.
Gio, did you want to say something, Gio?
No, 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 no.
It said our
It's that hour.
It's that, but okay, I'll try to make this short and sweet because I thought about this for a long time, and it's like our community is small enough where it needs to in some ways, people that are really passionate about this, which I think all of us are, it needs to be cultivated a little bit and nurtured. And what I mean by that is, if people are buying into breaks and losing more often than they're not, then value is escaping the hobby ecosystem in general for people.
right.
And people are going to get disappointed. They're going to leave. They're going to be mad. They're not going to want to come back. And the reason that's bad is because the hobby thrives when people are able to get value back from breaks, trade cards, get the stuff they want without losing like their wallet, right? And I think the way that we find equilibrium is like, and this is where I am a big proponent of snake drafts for Immaculate. I'm a big proponent for combined weight classes for divisional breaks, and that's something that I did back in 21. And the reason for that was it might cost a little bit more, but on average, everyone's getting almost all their value back for the most part, or at least closer to that amount as much as possible, even when they don't hit a big card. And that way they can sell it off, get the money back, whatever they want to do, right? Trade cards for what they're looking for. And when there's a divergence of that, which means the breaker is making more money than people are getting back, that's when you start having problems. And I think Pick Your Fighter is probably the most egregious example of that, which is if you think about like how much profit they're making on those breaks, that is the highest margin that you're making on a the Pick Your Fighter format makes the breaker the most amount of money. It does not make the people buying into the breaks the most amount of value back. And if we think about like econ terms, the perfect equilibrium that is like more sustainable for the hobby is getting a balance where you're maximizing the profit for the breaker, but you're maximizing the value back to the actual people buying into the breaks. And where do we see that, right? And I feel like snake drafts are a good example of that. Like with boxes, individual boxes, you have the variance that comes from a bad box that could happen, right? I think divisional breaks are probably a better way to do it for most folks. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents, is like the happy balance there needs to be a balance. It can't be all one thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, you've seen
what's
that
a
ship
snake
happen.
draft? That's the only
Oh,
thing.
yeah. So Joe, this is, and this won't apply for like Prizm because there's too many cards, but the way that we preferred to do breaks for Immaculate was you get 5 boxes in the case, right? And you have, there's going to be at least one box that's a dud. Right. So you don't want to buy individual boxes. You don't want to do one box because you might get skunked.
Yeah.
So every case has at least a few big hits. Like there's going to be at least a few big ones. We don't want to have like 7, 8, 9, 10 people buying into it because there's not going to be enough value to go around. So you limit it to like, what's a good amount? 4 people maybe for a whole case of Immaculate. Now the price point for that's going to be, at the time it was like what, $500-600. It's a lot of money, but one box was going for close to that, right? So you open up all of the product, and then basically you randomize the 4 names, and whoever picks first doesn't pick again until pick 8. So it's kind of like a fantasy football draft.
Okay, gotcha. Like a draft.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
yeah. So like the guy that gets, or the gal who gets pick 1, they get the best card in the whole case. They made their money and then some, right? But pick 2 is going to be amazing also, because that whole case probably has some decent 2nd, 3rd, 4th best hits. And then whoever got the last pick, which is pick 4, it's a snake, so they get the pick 5. So they pick 2 cards, right? Okay. So now they've got like a glove patch, maybe they've got like an out of 10 auto or something. Anyway, and then that's like, it's a good way to reduce the variance, and everybody feels like they're coming away a winner.
It levels it out a bit.
It's a game within the game as well. It's kind of fun. It's interactive and all that.
It's very
perfect. For Immaculate, it's perfect.
It was
Immaculate. It worked fantastic. We all brought Immaculate case. Who was it? Me, you, Jiho, me, you, Turnit, and was Danny in there?
Danny was in it. Yeah.
Okay, so us 4. Yeah, I mean, we broke an Immaculate case, just the 4 of us, and it worked great. I mean, I mean, at least I think so. What do you guys think?
I loved it. I love it. I love it. Like
I thought it was fair.
If I don't even get all the cards, if I don't get a big hit that I want, if I can sell the cards and make a small profit or get most of my money back, and I had that great experience, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
It's
lucky enough
like,
to get a dream card of mine.
Nice.
yeah. There you
Thanks
go.
to you guys for being generous.
No,
Hey,
no.
all good. That was
That's
Jiho,
what
I
it is,
think.
though, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
comes
Jiho,
down to-
you threw me a bone there because you knew I wanted that card.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So I
Joe,
still owe you one.
that's kind of like the philosophy behind it is nobody should leave a break feeling like they got absolutely hosed.
Yeah.
And any format that promotes those types of reactions in my mind is not a good format.
No,
And I'm not saying people are bad
all.
for doing it. Like
That's it,
by the way,
Jiho.
I'm
I can
not
see
practicing
it.
what I preach because I buy into a lot of pick your fighter breaks and stuff and all that, but I know what I'm getting into. I'm a degen. All right. But at least I'm being transparent about my habits.
Right.
Yeah, Paul, on that point, I just feel like I'm almost obligated to say something as a seller on Whatnot for almost 2 years. We all sell on Whatnot, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Whatnot is inherently a gambling platform. We have to, I feel the responsibility to say that right now. If you're going to buy into breaks, you are gambling.
I'm getting
And-
a call from my lawyer. He says not to acknowledge what you just said.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point, I feel like I'm obligated to say that because, I mean, I sell singles on Whatnot, so I'm not doing breaks. I'm not doing anything, no mystery packs, none of that stuff. But people have to know what they're getting into. And I feel like it is kind of our responsibility to let people know it is a gamble when you're buying into a pick your fighter, when you're buying into a mystery pack, when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
doing a pool pile or anything like whatever. It is, you're taking a risk, and don't spend more than what you have to spend. So
Yeah, 100%.
no, I just want to get that out there because when you can be buying from good people or bad people, you have no idea who you're buying from. And we've all experienced it. We've probably all experienced it, I would imagine.
Yes.
For the amount of time that we've been breaking, where we haven't received what we've bought, and you got to be careful who you buy from.
No, I
And
agree
then
with you there. Yeah.
I wanted to call out something that Stache just said because we've talked about this too. Okay, it's one thing to do a pick your fighter break where you overcharge for stuff and people buy into it and you're making that's okay, that's one thing, right? Because you're overcharging for a product and people can make their own decisions about what the value is and stuff. But if you sell a pick your fighter and then you keep and retain the biggest spots for yourself as a seller, I hate you.
Dirty. Very
I
dirty.
think you're a shitty person.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think you're a scumbag. I'll say that. If you do that, that's a scummy thing to do.
Like,
Yeah,
that
you-
is not cool, man.
I mean,
Sorry,
shit,
pardon our French, Joe.
Nah, it's
No.
all good. French away.
it's
The streets
South
would not be
Park.
kind to you, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm Asian. Hopefully by now, is that I'm pretty good with numbers, and I figured that to actually provide some sort of context as to how much these people are actually making the more of the negative side. They make an average of 1.8 to 2.4 net profit, and sometimes
per
they
break?
retain per break.
Jeez.
And they sometimes net. They still keep the choice fighters, as Turnit mentioned. And so when you have people taking away Bulo, taking away Shemaev, it's kind of like then
There's no value left.
And then I've heard, I can't tell you enough that I want to just let this all out, but got to also throw in a filter there that when you're doing this, you're diminishing the reason why we all do this.
Right.
We enjoy this because of the hobby. We want to get to know each other. We want to talk about why we're fans of fighters, why we're actually into MMA, this crazy mishap sport. But then I see a lot of people that are actually good for the hobby that we could actually recommend to you who actually do run PYFs, even on eBay, that we would wholeheartedly, at least I do, wholeheartedly support them, because even one of them was just giving away Hasbullah spot for free. I mean, who does that?
That's pretty crazy.
Like average is $400.
Yeah.
So these people are they're looking out for us, but then there's plenty of them that just
They hit 3 letters, Jiho.
Yeah, that have fleeced people, and then they just say that they're for the hobby. So I just don't want to say on the rerun all the time.
And it's important to say this also: the cards create the hobby, but the people create the community, right?
That's right.
Man,
That's right.
I
It
thought
needs
I
to
was
be a
Asian
healthy
looking
environment.
here.
Hey,
Yeah, no. I'm changing my name to Confucius on Whatnot. So
It's
I
good.
I know Joe, we only have you for a little bit more. Do we want to any closing thoughts there, or should we
Yeah,
transition maybe to talking about Saturday's fights?
One thing I was just going to add to that, and this is a lot of people find me just because I think I've been doing it a while. I get thrown into people's YouTube algorithms, so I get a lot of people that don't know much about UFC cards coming to me and asking me stuff. And I do see people that are really interested in it. And what worries me is those people, I point them in certain ways as much as I can to what I think is good and productive and is going to nurture them, like you're saying. But what scares me about the breaking stuff in general is that I see these guys that are breaking basically every night, especially when the product comes out, and they're doing 2 or 3 cases, and then they're showing 3 or 4 Instagram slides of monster cards, like monster
right,
cards, and it
right.
just makes you think, oh my god, I have to get it on this.
Yeah,
They have a gold Hezbollah, they have a Tealbo nickel, all these amazing things, but you're like, dude, that was 2 cases, maybe 3 cases. Like that's $6,000 worth of
you're right.
breaking. Like those cards don't add up to that at all. But it's very bait and switchy to me, and that's what's always been kind of off-putting by it, is that like I wish there was a little bit more transparency. Like, yeah, we got all these cards, but we spent a buttload of money that I'm pocketing. No one's going to say this, but basically I'm
Sure,
pocketing most of it.
sure,
Um,
sure.
so that is really, and don't get me wrong, like I understand breaking in that, especially like I like opening cards physically because, like I said earlier, this is a nostalgia thing for me, and it's something that I did as a kid to hold the pack and to pull that one card and see the amazing hit underneath
Yes.
it. Like I need that physical thing. But also there's a lot of people that don't want to sit in their basement and open a box by themselves. Like they want a social thing where they're all together watching this guy open the cards for them. And I get it. Like it's a great sense of community and it's really fun. But you have, like you said, you have to be careful, especially when Whatnot came out, because like, I would go into these breaks and I'd see guys just, buy into 3 breaks. They didn't get anything, so they buy a Percy. I'm like, dude, where is this money coming from? Like, stop
Yeah,
doing
I've
that.
been
Like,
there.
I've
yeah,
literally
I've
been
been there
in breaks
too.
where I'm like, I want to message the guy like, yo, chill out, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where I really started getting away from it, because it seemed like it made it a little too easy just to go crazy. And so yeah, I guess from all of this, that's all I want to say is, I don't want to tell anyone how to enjoy the hobby. Do it the way you want to do it, but make sure, like you said, know exactly what you're getting into. And
right.
hopefully, I wish most of these breakers would be a little more transparent about that, but it probably would kill a lot of the money they're making. And as Jiho said, the money they're making is insane. I mean, I know some of these guys are really young, and that's, if you do the math on that, that's really
Yeah,
high.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
one case break
And,
pays your rent.
and
Yeah.
one thing that we should underline is that none of us actually break at all. In fact, we sell singles, we sell mystery packs like Turnit does, which obviously kicks
I
ass.
try to. I know mystery packs have also a bad rap, but I try to do it in the best possible way.
You are a
Dude, you created a 700 card spreadsheet. If
It's
you
more
don't think
now.
that's
It's more.
transparency, then yeah, and that's full transparency.
yeah,
You put a spreadsheet out for everybody to look at. So I'm talking about the hidden stream of money that people are getting,
yeah,
and you can hide that. And like Basis said earlier, I mean the amount of money that they're making is hidden in the numbers. So like the
that's
amount
Yeah,
of
yeah.
fighters in the figure fighters, or in the amount of cards in the stack for a mystery, like what is that, a pool game? So 200 cards with 7 hits or whatever it is. I mean, the
Yeah,
percentage is
yeah.
so low of you actually hitting something, and that's what people need to be careful of, is buying into these things and not knowing, thinking that they see the cards that are all nicely laid out on the stands in front of the streamer, and
mhm,
they think that they're going to be the one to hit that, and most of the time they're not.
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
That's what people have to be careful of, especially people the new people that are just getting into the hobby have to be careful of seeing these cards. Like Joe said, it's the glorification of the hobby. It's seeing all the best cards on people's Instagram pages, but you don't really know how much they're punting their money off in order to get these cards.
Yeah.
so
One
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
one of the best things I ever did, and I made a video about it. It's actually one of my most popular videos, but I literally, and I think all of us in here are just number guys, and I like number stuff. So last year I really documented everything, and I saw what was losing and what was winning. And honestly, opening packs myself was actually not that bad of a deal because I couldn't do that much of it. Buying into breaks crushed me. Even though I pulled 2 of my biggest cards last year from buying into breaks, what I spent on the breaks was way, way higher. And you know, as everyone will tell you, who's ever been in the sports card hobby, buying singles is always going to be the best way to go. It's not anywhere near as
always
fun.
good. Yeah.
There's no rush. There's no, you know, adrenaline or any of that, but it is the safest, best bet. And buying to grade is also really good, but you do have to be, you know, you can get caught in that as well. You can get into trouble thinking you're always going to like resell everything for a great price. But buying singles, you know, your margin is so much better. So that's my public service announcement to anybody watching.
I think that's what we all love about Chicken, though, is he says that flat out when you're doing a break with Chicken. He says, you know, I tell you guys all the time, buying singles is the way to go. If you know what fighter you want, go buy your singles. Like, don't break with me if you're planning on hitting the biggest chase. Like, go buy the single from eBay, because that's always the most cost-effective thing to do. Yeah. So I think that's what we're looking for, is transparency in the hobby, and not feel, you know, to not feel like we're being lied to, or people that are new in the hobby to be
it's the new ones I'm worried about. Yeah. Like, I mean,
well, we've all been there, and that's
like degens recognize degens, so I'm not going to tell a degen what to do with their money. Like, they know enough about like what they're doing, right? But it's the new people that don't know that they're being like overhyped on some of these things that I worry the most about, because that's like, they're not everyone's going to want to play like that, right? Or like enjoy the hobby that way. And then what I always tell like my brother, although I don't practice this, even though I preach it, is before I buy into a break, I ask myself, why am I buying into this break? Is it because I'm chasing something? Because if I don't even know what I'm chasing, then it's like, you should not be buying into a break if you don't even know why you're getting into it. Because a lot of times it's like yeah, it is. And like, I look at like 21 Chronicles, which I love, and I buy into those breaks. Like, I go through them like a wood chipper, because I know the value of some of those cards, and I think there's a lot of value to be had, right? But if I can buy the chase that I'm looking for the price, or less than the price of a box, what am I doing? Right? Like, what am I doing? And you can get dopamine elsewhere.
So
yeah,
100%.
I mean, burpees. So that said, we got 5 minutes left, and I just don't want to, you know, want to take away much more of Joe's time. I mean, we got to get your thoughts about UFC 288.
I was going to say, if you guys want me to just I can rifle through, you know, my thoughts. And honestly, you know, and I've talked about this a lot. I was, you know, very casual for a very long time with UFC. I've been shooting UFC fighters. I think I did my first UFC fighter shoot way before I worked at Ruka. I shot Rich Franklin in 2004 for a magazine. So, I mean, I've been involved in UFC, you know, and I've watched, kind of like you were saying, I would watch every pay-per-view or most of the pay-per-views and stuff like that. But until I got into cards, I really didn't start watching younger fighters and the prelims and all that stuff. So, you know, I watch guys like you. There's a bunch of channels where I learn a lot. So I feel like when I talk about the fights, I sound, it's my least confident in what I know about people. And most of the time when I look at the fights, like I'm looking at the fight card right now, and I'm just picking guys that I know I have rookie cards of, you know. So like Kennedy and
hey, he's not bad. I like him.
Yeah, but I have his card, so I like him. I don't know who Devin Clark is, so I'm going with Kennedy. It kind of makes it fun. I don't know.
It makes it fun
to root for, you know.
Yeah, and it feeds the hobby too. Like,
ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. Drew Dober, I was watching him call out Patty Pimlet recently, and it was hilarious, the shit talking he was doing. And I've seen him fight a few times, and I like him. He's a monster. I like Drew Dober. Cron Gracie, have you guys seen him? He's at the press conference with a cup doing dip spit. Like, he's like chewing tobacco. I'm like,
man.
How is there a Gracie?
You can't see this; it's blurred. But yeah, I have a Cron Gracie mojo. I'm a big fan of his,
dude. And I saw a video this morning of him. Basically, Cejudo was taking his time signing the posters because like Cejudo's talking about how handsome he is and shit like that. And Cron's like, dude, I'm gonna fucking wait out here. I'm not sitting behind this guy. Like, just started talking shit about him. So now I'm a huge Cron Gracie fan.
I'm telling you, man, he's awesome.
And
5-1 in the UFC too.
Yeah. And then Mofsar versus I was hoping for Bryce Mitchell, but I don't know who Diego Lopez is at all. But Mozart, obviously a big rookie from last year. And you know, I'd like to see him do well. Obviously I want all the rookies that I collected in the previous years to do well. Andrade versus Yan, that's
That's a good fight too.
Yeah, that's a really like a banger. I don't know, man. It's funny because I was all on Andrade until the last fight. I mean, it's when they lose, then you're like, oh, I don't know. But she's such a badass.
She is a badass. Yeah.
So I guess I lean towards Andrade there. Gilbert Burns is one of my favorite, my top 3 favorite fighters. So, but that's going to be amazing. Him and Bilal, like, there's so much respect between those two. Honestly, I don't know that it's going to be the most exciting fight because they're both so damn intelligent and are going to be really smart. And I feel like sometimes when you have 2 fighters that are just really, really smart, you don't get the most exciting fight, but maybe we'll see. And Sterling and Cejudo, I watched an interview with Aljamain Sterling, and when I look at his record on paper, I'm like, he's a really good fighter. He gets a lot of shit because of the illegal knee and all that stuff. And I just watched an interview with him, and I'm like, I don't fucking like this guy at all. Like, I
get the same vibes, Joe.
Yeah,
I get the same vibes.
He has this like sense of like, I mean, all fighters are cocky and all this stuff, but he has this like kind of just irritating narcissism.
Yeah.
He was very
overwhelming sense of arrogance. It's just disgusting.
It's so annoying. Yeah.
So and as much as Cejudo can be just as annoying, he's just hilarious. Did you guys see the press conference today where he came out and he had
pillows?
Little pillows with baby, and he starts kicking him into the crowd. Like, I mean,
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's great. So
love Cejudo.
Yeah, I would go triple C on that one. So those are my picks. I'll stay for like 5 more minutes, but when I take off, I'm gonna have you guys on when I'm driving home. So I want to hear what you guys talk about if you keep going.
Oh yeah, no, thank you.
Man. That's mighty cool of you.
No, of course I've been doing that whenever that's one of my main ways to watch, YouTube streams and stuff like that. It's so great. I love this job. This is a really, really cool place to work at, but it's about an hour and 20 minutes from where I live. Wow. That's why, people ask me to do things like live streams and stuff like this. And I want to do them here because I don't have any of this shit at my house, but it's like, I have to finish this so I can actually get home and see my kid for 5 minutes. It's like you add in 3 hours of driving to your day. It's crazy how much, little time you have for other things. And, I still want to I have to edit these videos. I want to sit down.
It's stressful. It's a lot. It's a lot.
So. Hey, we really appreciate you coming on and we really appreciate you doing awesome content on YouTube too. I mean, it's awesome. You've done a great job so far.
No, and my turn to talk about you guys. You guys, I think I saw your first or second episode, and I wanted to shout you out almost immediately. The dynamic between all you guys, and you guys were all talking about things that I think not enough people were talking about as far as in the card. You were really going deep into the type of shit that I like, that we've talked about today, which is really thinking about, where are these cards, how are they going to age, like you said, the economics of things, pricing, rarity, all that stuff. I think is fascinating with this stuff, and you guys really talk about it intelligently. And so yeah, I was happy to do this.
Well, appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Wow, I mean, just for those words alone, I mean, it's gonna get sloppy in about like 10 minutes after I've had a triple shot. We always learn good things from you. I mean, that's just great to have like that sort of company. I mean, we have the Golden Octagon. With us, along with our fellow friends YK and Chris Stache. I mean, it means a lot.
Don't forget Basis Dude.
And Basis Dude. Yeah. But if you want takes, should we just go over it quickly with you, or do you want us to just ramble on about a specific fight?
Me or you guys?
Us. What would you like?
Well, so yeah, I'll probably bounce out like 5 minutes from right now. So whatever you guys want to talk about.
All right. So let's go down the line then. We have the prelims. We have Kenny Nchuku versus Devin Clark. We have a guy who's 11-3. He has rookie card in 2022 versus Devin Clark, who is 14-7. Thoughts, guys?
I haven't looked up a lot of the fights for Devin recently, so nothing comes to mind right off the bat for me. But I've been watching Kennedy for a little while, and I like him a lot. I think he brings a lot of energy. I mean, his last few fights, I've been impressed with what he's shown, so I'm leaning towards him for sure.
Yeah, I looked at some of their stats earlier today, and I think that's probably one of the biggest toss-ups of the night, to be honest. I think it's going to be it's going to be exciting for sure, in my opinion. I think I'd have to review some of the stats again. I was looking at it at work, so I wasn't paying too much attention to it, but I just remember that being one of the fights that I'm going to be most excited about, at least on the prelim side of things.
Yeah, I am excited for Kennedy because he comes from the same camp as Damon Jackson, Sean Brady. He comes from Fortis MMA, based in Texas. He is more disciplined, more refined in his striking, I believe, more than Devin. Devin is much more like a brawler, if you will, trying to make things ugly. So I see this fight obviously ending with a TK or a KO
Right.
with these two athletes because it's not a heavyweight fight, but these guys love to trade. So where I see this happening is like I'm in favor of Kennedy because I'm just a fan of him. He actually does mentor fights, other fighters rather. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
And Drew Dober, though, we do definitely know who this guy is versus Matt
He's a
Favola.
monster.
Yeah, 23 rookie. Where do we have this fight?
Dober, man, the chin of steel.
The guy who doesn't mind just rushing into it like a freight train.
Dude, he's
Freight train.
impressed me so
Yeah.
much. He's impressed me so. He's got grit. He's got a chin. The Bobby Green fight. I mean, he's impressed me with every last fight he's had. I just see him coming out on top here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I would think,
I'm not offering
but
like complex analysis here. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I would have to agree. But within the last 2 years, Matt Favola, I think he's only had 3 fights, but his only loss was to Arman Sarukian. So, and his other 2 fights were both KOs, KO TKOs in the first round. So, Matt Favola is a dog, but we all know Drew Dober. Like you said, you don't simply knock out Drew Dober.
No,
Yeah.
you do not.
And he's not going to be the one that throws in the towel. Like he's going to be the guy that fights until the very last drop of blood is in his body. Like he's going to fight till the death.
Yeah.
He literally is a manifestation of just bleed. He just wants to go.
Yes.
Just wants to wreck people, regardless of how he goes about it. I mean, sometimes I don't know if it's a lack of fortitude or prudence, rather. I don't want to say lack of intelligence because I think he's a smart guy. But the way he knocked out Bobby Green, how many shots he had to eat just to let that end. Like, I don't know about that guy, but
he's a nut, man.
Juggernaut. So it's like, hey, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. I'm gonna have it my way.
Yeah, it's kind of like Chandler, isn't it? A little bit.
Yeah, but not as refined.
Not as refined. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look up the definition of grit in the dictionary, you find Drew Dober.
Yeah,
he's an animal.
The best chin in the world, man. That thing is
that
beautiful.
guy though. Favola has had some. He's had some trouble in the past working with or going against like grapplers such as Arman. Yeah. So I do see Drew Dober taking this, especially since he has the pedigree in wrestling from the Midwest, mind you. So I see.
Shout out to the Midwest.
Yeah, the Midwest.
Corn-fed, baby.
All right. But there are some other fights that we should also get into as well. Not just Drew Dober and Kennedy and Chuku. We have Marina Rodriguez. She was speculated to like take over Amanda Lemos. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It wasn't the case. Where do we see that fight happening? She's against Verna Janjidrobi. I never heard of her before. But 18-3.
Man, that one's also a toss-up in my mind. That's going to be a hard one for me. Yeah, like everybody knows Marina Rodriguez. I think she's very good. Her loss against Lemos was not a surprise to me. I actually had Lemos in that fight. But if I had to take a pick on this one, I would say probably Rodriguez. But this one's also a toss-up for me. It's going to be hard because, man, what's her name? I can't. What is it, Virna?
Yeah, I'm looking this up too.
She's so strong, dude. If you've seen her fight, Jiho? Or are you familiar with her at all?
She's more of a grappler, though, right?
I remember seeing a few in the past, but she is very muscular and very strong. Exactly she's only had 3 losses in her career.
Right. And that's what we see with typical like female athletes from Brazil. They tend to be like more physically imposing, more than like
Rob Schneider,
for example, Yan Zhaonan, right? And that's where Marina, that's where she doesn't do the best. Is like when she's physically like being like intimidated.
At a disadvantage.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's 36. We have to take into account her age as well. So
Yeah, you're right. I mean, she took Dern to decision and won that. She took
mhm.
Watterson to decision, won that. She knocked out Hebas, which has aged really well. Um, Amanda Lemos knocked her out. I don't
Yeah,
know. I remember seeing Verna because of her haircut. Like I remember her haircut. It's very unique. And I thought
What
she was
about
a
her haircut?
badass. It's just unique. Like it's just very for female
How
fighters. It's
so?
fun.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's okay. It's okay to say stuff's unique. But
She was
she,
also at the photo shoot. I saw some behind the scenes thing, and she was doing these crazy dances. So that made me realize like it's just kind of
oh yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, like some people like I like when personality comes out. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's haircuts, sometimes it's tattoos. Like I forgot that guy's tattoo from last week. Kai's like that
Oh,
his
with the
like
neck.
tattoo.
yes,
You mean to tell me that haircuts are iconic?
Yeah, Patty,
yeah.
baby. But yeah, I this is a tough one. This is a toss up for me because I could see this being a lot more interesting of a fight than maybe many people would expect. Just because
Yeah,
of
I
what
think
you
so
the
too.
dynamic you mentioned, Jiho is like you've got Marino who's well experienced, has taken things
Right.
to decision. You've got Verno who's got a little bit more power probably. Her fight against Angela, I mean Angela Hill's no slouch, right? So
I don't know why people
Right.
trash on her in the hobby. It's just
I
like
No.
don't get that either.
that doesn't make any sense to me.
I like Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
All
been
right,
around forever. She's
I gotta get out of here,
durable.
guys.
Joe, it was
Joe, it
such
was
a
great
pleasure.
having you, man.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. That was awesome. Let's do it again sometime. Hopefully, I'll have more time. And
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thanks again. I'm gonna be listening to you guys on the way out. Keep up the good work. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.
Hey,
Hey,
drive
you as
safe,
well,
Joe.
man.
I
Cheers,
will
brother.
for sure. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See if I can figure out how to turn off Zoom.
Then we have our producer in the back who is getting paid in. I'll order some DoorDash for him. Maybe he'll switch it. Let's just see if he can switch it to the 3-person view. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's. Oh, nice.
That's cool as all hell.
All right, awesome. Okay, so which fight should we talk about next? Should we
Yeah,
get to the main card?
I mean, there is Philip Hawes,
Yeah, it's gone.
but yeah, let's go ahead and just talk about
Funny.
Kron. Kron versus Charles Jourdain. We know that
Oh,
Kron, he moved out
Oh yeah.
to God knows where. because
Montana.
Montana, exactly. He's a
Yeah.
skater boy, right? He was a skater from Santa Monica, decided to move all the way up to Montana to shovel snow and whatever else. It's a new camp there. Versus Charles Jourdain, who's just coming off of 2 losses. But let's not forget how exciting he is as a fighter
Yes.
because he is one of those strikers that just makes things fun. Sure, he didn't have the best of luck with Nathaniel Wood, but he killed it against Chedohan. So, what are your thoughts there?
Dude, this is going to be a tough fight for Kron.
It is.
Kron Gracie, I mean, he's obviously good and he's well-rounded in my opinion. His striking was surprising to me the first time I saw him fight in MMA. So I think that's going to be to his benefit in this fight. But Charles Jourdain, I mean, I think that this is going to be a tough fight for him to come back on. To come
Can you
back to
guys
fighting MMA, it's going to be hard for him.
can you as somebody who's not as well versed in the BJJ, lore behind the Gracie name, can you guys maybe for all those out there that may not be familiar, talk about Kron's background? Like,
Oh, can we?
So I think people
Funny you
I'm
asked.
interested in knowing.
Yeah, definitely. Roll, you want to go at it or you want to? We can tag team this too.
Well, you start out because I know you're West Coast. Well, okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll follow.
All right, yeah, sure. So Kron Gracie is the second son of Rickson Gracie, the guy who basically claimed that it had a 400-0 record prior to the UFC becoming as large as it is right now. Rickson Gracie was basically the lion of the Gracie clan. And so when he had his 2 sons, Hoxton and Rickson, well, they were speculated to just be the very best, right? And
Yeah.
in jiu-jitsu, unfortunately, Hoxton did actually pass, but with Kron, I think that he was always going for the kill. He was never in it for the points. He just wanted to sub everybody he ever met, including the greats like Marcelo Garcia. And he had a pretty thriving career in the jiu-jitsu scene, and the rules favored towards him when jiu-jitsu tournaments were favoring more of submission-based matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had EBIs, you had that Metamoris before it went away. So then you had Kron training with like Nate and Nick Diaz up here in the Bay Area, right?
Oh, wow.
And because he was never comfortable with the striking, so it took him a while. I mean, he was like Mackenzie Dern, like the other jiu-jitsu people, like Rodolfo Vieira. They all had to lose their, a lot of their weight because a lot of it wasn't conditioned to be an MMA. And it took him a few years to get into it. And when he did, he started to like find his own groove. But just like his father, he kind of had a zombie approach is the best way to explain it. Like he isn't a dynamic person when it comes to striking. He just kind of like he moves like a fucking World War tank. And obviously his jiu-jitsu game, bar none, is fantastic. However, it doesn't endorse takedowns. He does look for the constant submission, which is the reason why he's a threat. But most recently, I think he went against Cub Swanson, who happened to also be a Gracie black belt, if I'm not mistaken, but he lost to him. So that's my take on.
Which was fight of the night in
Yes.
that card. So, and it was a great fight. He loses by decision one time and then moves to Montana. So that's kind of on Kron. Also, there's a few main different families or different how do I put this?
Schools,
branches.
With branches with the Gracie family. So, like in my area in particular, I'm in the Midwest, like in the Chicago area. So, and Turnit, obviously, you're from this area also, but this is like Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. If you head out west, like there's a lot of Carly Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Like Jiho was saying with Hickson and Hoxton, which sounds funny saying that together, but
it does sound funny.
But Hickson was like you said, the lion. He was the best. Like he was one of the best of the Gracie family. And if almost everybody's familiar with Hoist Gracie.
Yep.
They put him into the UFC to make a point because he was actually the one that they had the least amount of faith in the family. Like he was one of the weaker ones, and they thought, if we can put Hoist in there and he can dominate everybody, then Hickson being the dominator that he is, this will show the world that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is real. And he went in and dominated everybody in UFC 1 and throughout the first few UFCs. So that really put a name on Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. But Hickson was always like the family star. He was the one that went in through had a great grappling record, had I think almost 40 fights, 39 fights, I think it was. Fought guys. He won against Leandro Lowe.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to Leandro Lowe.
Yeah, what a legend.
Some other big names, like you said, Marcelo Garcia, another huge, jiu-jitsu fanatic, no-gi fanatic, one of the best ever.
Right.
So, but yeah, he's had some great wins, some great MMA matches up to this point against Cub Swanson. Like I like Cub Swanson at that time specifically. Mm-hmm. Cub Swanson was a dominator, and just an all-around good fighter. So I think he's going to come back strong. I think he's going to come back resilient, but I think he just needed some time off. Maybe he just needed to put things into perspective that, the UFC and MMA in general is not the most important thing in life. And he probably just needed to get out and start to realize that. And I think he's going to come back better, in my opinion, because of that, because of realizing who he is. But fighting a guy like Charles, like I said, Jourdain is no slouch. And I think that this is going to be a really good fight. It's probably going to be one of the top 3 fights, in my opinion, because I think that Kron is he's going to put everything on the line. I don't think he's going to hold any punches. And I think he's going to fight a hard fight. And I'm excited to see what happens. I'm very excited for this one.
Well, for him to pick that fight says a lot about what this means, right? Because it's not like a lot of times you'll see guys kind like trying to come back and they'll pick up a few cans, right, to get back in
Yeah.
the flow. And
Right.
that tells you like they're career minded or whatever. Like when somebody comes back and they want to fight the baddest fight they can get, that makes sense for everybody, right? Because it's like you can't force
Yeah.
fights either. It tells me that he's looking to prove something, and maybe he did have a reset, right, from a mental. So I'm rooting for Kron now because I was
Yeah.
already going to, but now even more so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a story behind it, and I think it's a testament to the Gracie family. Honestly, I mean, they want the challenge. They used to do dojo storms and go into people's
Yes.
gyms and challenge them. I mean, and it would be like one or two guys, and they walk into a gym and take on anybody that would actually put up a fight. So it's just a testament to how tough the Gracie family is, and I think that he's going to carry the lineage great. And I'm really hoping he comes back and gets a dominant win because I'm a big fan of the guy. I think he's awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
he needs it. I mean, that sort of mentality, you can't, man, that
That can't be taught,
indomitable.
dude. That can't
Yeah,
be
you
taught. You're
cannot be
born with
taught.
that.
Yeah. And it's funny because we heard as like, obviously you're a jiu-jitsu just like I am. We heard stories about how this guy would just be like skateboarding all the time, but then he was just, man, he's vicious on the mats. Old
Oh,
school jiu-jitsu too. It's just like close guard. And for us, we're not as acclimated to close guard because we're learning De La Hiva, we're learning X, we're
mm,
learning Spider, so many different types of guards. And what they use is more tried and true. Not to say that Kron hasn't developed a more modernized jiu-jitsu game, but he still has his roots in old school. Uh,
right. There's
let's,
nothing better than watching a Hicks and Gracie fight.
him
Nothing
and
better.
was it
Fascinating.
Hunter Gracie? Hunter Gracie?
Oh,
Old
one of the best of all time in jiu-jitsu. In gi jiu-jitsu, he's probably the best of all time.
the best. Go to Gi. Um,
Buchecha probably being a close second.
he beat him twice, man.
Right, but I'm saying a close second, probably
Yeah.
behind him. I mean, Leandro put up a good. I would say no gi. Obviously, Gordon Ryan's probably one of the better candidates for that
Gordon
spot. But
Ryan is by if he were so we're gonna talk about that.
yeah, we could have a whole
So
podcast about this. But
I've been seeing
yeah,
Gordon Ryan a lot pop up on Reddit because
Gordon
I
Ryan
follow the
great when
BJJ
it
Reddit.
comes to the no-gi. But the problem is he's never been battle tested, as in he's never done MMA.
Mm.
Unlike Hodger. Hodger
right,
actually he's fought in MMA. That's why I consider him to be better.
yeah, he's probably my top. He's probably my number one when it comes to him and yeah, it would probably be him. It would have to be a him at the top and nobody even close. Yeah, Buchecha maybe would be close at that division, but I mean, yeah, Hodger Gracie's the man. I mean, he's just the man.
Hodger
He's
is
like
the man.
he's the goat of gi jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and thank you, bassist, for saying that. Yeah, Hodger was even great in MMA. He
Yeah.
did get a little tired. I mean, that's what happens when you do a new sport. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about our speaking about featherweights. Our undefeated Mozart Evloev taking on a late replacement Diego Lopez from Brazil. Um, we know that Mozart Evloev thrives in boxing. He loves Greco-Roman. Whereas Diego Lopez, he's pretty much a formidable grappler. Where do we see this happening?
Mozart, baby. He's
Yeah,
insane.
no doubt. In my opinion, I find. I mean, maybe it's just because of the hype and some. There's so much hype around Movzar, but I think that he's had so much success in the realm of grappling, um, as
Oh
far
yeah.
as UFC or MMA grappling, I should say. But he's been so successful. I mean, he's 16-0. He's fighting a guy that, looking at the statistics. I was looking at some of the statistics earlier, and the Diego Lopez doesn't have great takedown defense. I think Mozart's going to probably, mow him when it comes, like mow him over when it comes to grappling, and I think he'll do whatever he wants with him, in my opinion. But I mean,
No, I
I
mean
think
his last few fights, he's done exactly that. Really.
yeah,
So
and I think it would have been obviously better of a fight with Bryce Mitchell, given that they're both like high level grapplers, but in different styles. Stylistically, Bryce is a great at jiu-jitsu. Mozart's great at Greco-Roman and wrestling.
Slam overall, right?
I thought that fight was going to be amazing. Just
It would have been.
selfishly, I would have wanted to really see that because it would have been Mozart's probably first real test in the public sphere. and it would have propelled him, I think, into the conversation more than it already is in the hobby. This fight, I don't think does much for Movsar's hype if he
Right.
wins.
It
It's just
just further staples. You're right, Turnit. Yeah, it just further staples it to the floor. Like he is for real. But
Yeah.
what Mozart needs, if anything, is a damn finish. What we
yes, I agree.
haven't seen with Alexander Volkanovski, and the reason why he isn't as popular as say like Izzy or Islam or any of the other champions, including Brandon Moreno, is the very fact that he had both of those guys haven't finished fights. Last time Mozart actually finished a fight was outside of the UFC.
Yep.
And Volkanovski, his highlight reels aren't necessarily filled with him like knocking people out. Sure, he may hit hard, but it's him surviving like the worst case scenario, being guillotined by Brian Ortega, taking in swarms of punches from Holloway. So I like to see more of like that hunger, that drive. Not say that
Splash.
he doesn't display dominance. Yeah, exactly. That fire. I want to
Yeah.
see him end it, especially against Diego Lopez, who has been finished.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Because I feel like I have to defend Volk a little bit, I will say, not like totally defend or anything, but I would say when you get to the top of the mountain, longevity and preserving your legacy is probably
yeah,
more important than trying to go out there and like Alex's brand and his legacy is about dominance, absolute dominance and winning. And I think Izzy's to some degree is also, even though that Pereira knockout, like I was screaming like a little girl. It was unbelievably upset. It was like 4 a.m. in Africa when I was over there. My wife yelled at me, but like they're about preserving their legacy, take as little damage, extol as much damage as you can, right? Like just hurt people, but don't take needless risks, right? For a flashy finish. I think
mhm,
Michael Chandler is probably the opposite because he knows that his legacy and like his contracts and his fights are because of how entertaining he is, right? But if you're an up and comer, winning
I'll
is
be right
one
back, guys.
thing. But to your point, Jiho, like you do not get like you can do the slow route, which is like what Alex did, right? Which is win, 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 win in dominant
right,
fashion. But it's going to be a long road and long journey for you to get your due unless you have more highlight reel finishes. Um,
exactly.
and he speaks English natively, right? And I'm not saying Mozart doesn't speak like good English, but like he has had the benefit of promotions leading him up to this point that fed nicely into the UFC machine. Whereas Mozart, Islam, they have to do a lot more work to get the
Right.
same result. So I think you're right. Like for him to really experience an uptick here, he needs a finish. And I don't know if he's going to get one just because like his style is very I'm ground and pound. I'm going to grapple with you. I'm going to get you on the ground.
Right.
I'm going to win the decision. It's going to be unanimous. Like, yeah,
I mean, it's like you could either be an exciting fighter, like you said, speak English, and that's a massive thing, especially since we're just ignorant Americans, right? But it's also another thing to actually imbibe a culture, right? So, or the X factor, if you will. Sean
yeah,
O'Malley didn't have to open up his mouth. People are like, I want to know more about that guy. Khabib, right? He kept on winning, but he had this sort of weird fervency that people didn't realize towards the religion, and we got to respect it even more because of that. So I'm just saying, like, it's amazing. Um, but with Evloev, I just don't know. I mean, even though he keeps on winning, are we gonna have another? Was it not Brandon, but Arnold Allen on our hands? Like, where, yeah, sure, he keeps on winning, but do we want to see him in title contention? I just don't know.
yeah. I would because what's the other fight that's happening in featherweight coming up soon? Who's Ilya fighting against?
He is fighting. Who is Ilya fighting? Let me look that up right now.
It's a banger of a fight if I recall
I would
correctly.
like to see
Josh
Mozart
Emmett.
versus
Josh
Ilya.
Emmett. Right.
Emmett, Josh Emmett. Okay,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want if both okay, let's say Ilya wins and Movsar wins. I think that is the next best fight to make for number one contender. Because
100%.
because like Ilya is pure violence, and I thought he was worse than he is before that Bryce Mitchell fight, and I'm licking my wounds after that one. But Movsar needs to go up against someone like that, I think, and if he can beat and like stop the onslaught that Ilya can deliver from a striking perspective, then I think we've got a contender.
Yeah, I
For
don't know
sure.
if Ilya is necessarily there yet, though. Like you said, he is pure, brutal, unfiltered, unadulterated violence, but he kind of puts himself in harm's way at times.
He
Yeah.
does, yeah, he
At
does.
his base, he is a grappler, but what he loves to do is he likes to trade and just like get into just like unadulterated belligerence. Like he is like God of War. He just wasn't
Yes.
God of Chaos, for that matter.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I just feel like that's the no-brainer fight if both Ilya and Mozart win. And I
We
bet
saw
it's not a
that.
slouch. That's going to be tough.
We saw that with Jai Herbert. He almost got caught. I mean, he got caught. Like Ilya was in
Yeah.
trouble. And I mean, with Mavzar, I mean, he's a great grappler, so I think that would be a really interesting fight. Because, like you said, Jiho, he's a god of war. I mean, the guy will go out there and put everything on the line. He's not afraid to
Yeah.
lose. Like he'll go out. He's not afraid. He'll go in there and he'll swing for the fences.
Now, unlike
But
the
I
actual
think with the
God of
fight,
War,
like
but
Yeah.
Evloev is more timid, I think, because we saw him fight Dan Ige and he was holding back a little bit. I feel like he was using
Yeah.
his grappling effectively, but I think most of the time he got caught by Ige. Like he was in trouble for a second. So
Mhm.
it kind of goes both ways. I think that's going to be probably the most interesting fight at featherweight. Arnold Allen is still in the conversation, in my opinion, with his, he lost to Max Holloway, but
Yeah.
I mean,
100%. Yeah, that was a good fight.
good, though. He still
yeah,
looked
it was a
good.
fantastic fight though. And,
Yes. Yeah. I gained respect for Arnold Allen after that. I mean, it was a
yeah,
good fight.
I'm a big Arnold Allen guy. So, I may be a little biased, but,
No, it was good.
let's
Since we're
say Mavzar and Ilya fight. Who do you think wins against Volk? Do you think
I don't
anybody
think
wins
I don't
against
think
Volk?
anyone beats Volk.
against Volk,
I don't think
anybody
anyone
beats
wins
Volk.
against Volk. That's my opinion.
Islam is like big brother to Mozart, basically, from a style standpoint. Like he's
Right.
got everything that Mozart doesn't necessarily. No, Volk's the king, baby.
Volk is
I'm
the
a
king,
Volk
baby. I would
stan.
agree.
uh,
I love Volk, and I'll ride the Volk wheels till I'll ride it till the Volk wheels fall off, dude.
Yes.
Because I am
Hey,
a
this bus
giant Volk
has
fan.
unlimited room. Everybody can join.
I'm on
Everybody
board,
can
baby. I'm with you. I'm with you, and I ain't mad at you, Jiho, because I saw you cringe a little bit there, but I ain't mad at you.
It's okay.
I'm not a fan of Ilya beating Volk just yet, and even then, if ever. But like, I think Greco-Roman wrestlers are just cut from a different cloth,
Like
right?
Mozart has a chance, you think?
Uh, I don't really. It's like it's a tough one to actually like assess at this point because he does do great and in terms of like the stand-up grappling, which is a completely like what is it overlooked a facet of the game. When you see people clinched up against the cage, I'm like, oh, that's boring as hell. But it's the most taxing event.
Yes,
Dude.
yeah, I keep hearing that. Yeah.
I'm gonna write this down. I'll get back to it later because I need to talk about this guy.
Like Jiho, I would if and sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make one point because if that fight again, Volk versus Islam went the way that everybody thought it was going to go for Islam, then I would say Mozart is a contender and Volk's got a problem at featherweight. But because of how it went, and because of what I saw Volk do with Islam and how he defended and how he even got him on the ground towards the end because he's a psycho, I'm no longer worried about Mozart. Like he's a smaller guy. Like I still think he's going to be in the top 5 for a very long time. Like Mozart, that's where he lands. I do think he gets a title fight at some point. I really do. I just don't see anyone dethroning the great.
The great. Right. I mean, I think in truth, when I rewatched that fight now 2-3 times now, that it should have either a draw or Volk should have won. By damage alone. I mean,
damage. Okay.
But you can make that same case with Gamrot versus Sarukian.
That's
control versus damage. And so it's a fight. It's not based on technicalities, if you will. I mean, the root primal reason as to why we enjoy this is the violence, right? And so violence.
I love it.
Yeah. And so
I taste iron. I taste blood, Jiho.
Roll sees red, baby.
So much.
Give
Yeah.
me a monster and let me punch a hole in the drywall and call me Kyle, man.
Oh,
'Cause I love the violence.
I had a
No, just
prime. I bought a prime drink as a prop and I forgot it.
Next time though.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna be funny.
speaking of
I
violence, we gotta talk about Jessica and Raj, especially the way that she pound drove like Rose Namajunas. Holy shit. Andrade versus Jiao
Yeah,
Yan.
yeah.
Who do
Hey,
we have?
roll. Did you have any final comments? You took a
Oh
note, or is
yeah.
that later?
Yeah, just one thing. I have the top 5 in the featherweight division as follows, and in this order: Volk, Mavzar, Ilya, Allen, Yair. And I think that's my take on that.
But what about Max?
I think Max is out of the discussion
Hmm.
after the next title contention. Max is out of the
Okay,
discussion, in my opinion.
because
I
he might
think he may
retire.
be 6 or 7 or in the top 10, but I think that's my take in order as follows:
Fair enough.
Volk,
Fair enough.
Mavzar, Ilya, Allen, Yair.
That's
Cool.
interesting. Okay.
And that's my take. I don't know.
No, no,
It could
you're
be dead
allowed.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
might have to
okay.
take some Pepto-Bismol and Injustice. So, oh, look, let me think
What's
about it.
that?
I might have to take some Pepto-Bismol and
And some scope.
Injustice. Yeah, some
I
focus for the night after.
so roll. I acknowledge your list. I think it's a pretty good list. I would probably tweak a few things myself, but I like it. I like it. Um, and then Gio, speaking about Andrade versus Yang Yanan, I wanted to throw this out there and I wanted to see how you guys think about this. I see Jessica Andrade as the female RDA. What do you guys think
Oh,
about
Well, what? Okay, why the female RDA? That's interesting.
because she's been around for a while.
Hmm.
She's won. She's been in different weight classes. She's a
She won the top.
badass.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's a
Okay.
badass. She doesn't win every fight, but she gives it her all every fight. I don't know. I just feel like she's this dominant, like somebody that's been around for so long, has impressed me multiple times for different reasons. And like, yeah, she loses some fights, Blanchfield, right? That happened. But like she's just really impressive. And I think like she's gonna have a chip on her shoulder after that last fight. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just think like she has like what's the term I'm looking for here? There's longevity. Like her career has been so long and so impressive, right? And RDA is similar to me in that regard. Like I don't see them retiring and they just keep putting on great performances. It doesn't seem like they're losing that spark, if that makes sense.
Okay. I no, I can
And
see
they're
what
Brazilian, obviously. I mean, there's the obvious reason also, but
Brazilians. So I think that
they
Andrade.
look identical. No, no,
Oh shit, things are happening. More whiskey roll.
it's the
Uh,
haircut.
uh, I think that Andrade actually stands the better chance, but Jan has not Jan, but Jianan because that's her first name. Stands a better chance in terms of actually winning this technically. The way that she went about it in a pretty smart way against Mackenzie Dern, despite the first round, was it where she had her back exposed to an omoplata to the mount and whatever to was it not mount, but I think the arm triangle. I think Jianan is if she could apply intellect, but I still see Andrade, her power cannot be denied. You
Mhm.
know, and she has so
True.
much power. It's like Amanda Lemos, a rookie of 2023. Uh, yeah, I
Yeah,
just don't. know.
I'm leaning towards Andrade here.
Yeah, I can see that
But I
happening.
mean, I'll be happy with whoever wins. I'm rooting for both, if that makes sense. Like it's one of those fights where I just want to see what happens, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I just
I'm going to
want
be
to.
the outlier here, and I'm going to say that I think Shannon wins.
Whoa, how? Like through unanimous decision?
Potentially. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a grind fest. I mean, I know it's controversial, but I think that she has the tools. I just think that she has a good, well-rounded game, and we saw with her who'd she fight? Dern.
Dern.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, especially against somebody like Dern. I mean, with Dern's strengths in the grappling department, I think that I think she's probably going to surprise us again. Plus, Jessica is one of those lose one, win one fights or
Yeah.
fighters. One of the or win one, lose one type of fighters. Sort of like an
Right.
RDA. I think that's probably a good comparison
That
because
was
RDA is kind of a similar guy. Um, one of those guys that's kind of entering that last phase of their career, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Right.
I think that's how Andrade is looking at this point. Uh, I'm not taking anything away from Andrade because I think she is extremely talented and she has a lot of strength behind her game. But I think that as far as, can you guys still hear me? Because you guys
Yeah.
froze up
Me,
on my
no, I hear you.
Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that Xiaonan's probably going to be a little bit more technical. I think that she's quick. She just has a very well-rounded game in my opinion. And
Mm.
I think she's continuing to get better. I think she just continues
That's
to get
fair.
better as time goes on. Whereas Andrade might be entering that phase where she's kind of on a
Slipping a little.
um oh yeah, slipping a little downhill
Yeah,
at
the
this point. But
Blanchfield fight,
I'm
I
not
was
sure. I'm not one to
surprised.
say.
Yeah, I was surprised when she fought Blanchfield, just how dominant Blanchfield was. That threw me off because of that Lauren Murphy fight. Andrade looked like the second coming of Terminator. Um, so I mean, there's levels, right? People always say, and MMA math doesn't
Yes.
always work, right? So
It doesn't work. It never works, right?
yeah, that's what makes the sport so freaking amazing. Is
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think you got all the angles, you watched all the tape, doesn't matter. Two people enter the ring, anything can happen.
Yeah, I tell you the truth, I still don't believe in Aaron Blanchfield all that much. But having said that, I see I see Andrade pulling this off. Her power is such an X factor in this game.
I could, yeah, yeah. Well, this will be a good one.
Yeah, but speaking of another good fight that I feel like will go to a decision, we have Durinho versus Muhammad.
I
This
love it.
is awesome. I don't what the hell is going on at welterweight though?
I've been talking about this fight for probably 2 years now. And especially after the Brady win, I think there's no more time that's more fitting for this fight than right now.
Mhm.
And I'm so excited to see these two men fight. Um, Obviously I'm a huge Dorino fan, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how he performs against Bilal because this is a massive fight for him.
Right.
I
This is
think
as important to Bilal as any title fight,
I
aside from
think
the
it's
money, of
as
course.
important to Dorino, especially because
Yeah,
he's deserved the title fight at least 3 or 4 times after the Usman fight, in my opinion.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Because I mean, he caught Usman twice in that fight, and that was during COVID, so that had to be what 2020. So it's been
Mhm.
3 years in the making, and Dorino's fought some of the best. I mean, Hamzat made him look like a human being.
yep,
Yeah.
He's fought Neil Magny. Neil Magny's, he's a staple in the MMA community. He's been around forever, one of the biggest legends. As far as how many fights he's had, how much time in the octagon.
yeah.
Uh, Made an easy win over Neil Magny. And then his last fight, I just think that at this point, he probably deserves another title shot. So it's going to prove a lot for Dorino. If he beats Bilal, I think it'll finally prove to Dana, hopefully, that he's ready for a title shot. However,
Mhm.
Dana will probably want him to fight Colby or somebody else in the welterweight division before he actually fights for the title again,
Yeah.
which is a sad reality. But the same things happened to Benil
Oh yeah,
Dariush.
yeah. I
I
don't
mean, he's
think
just been
they don't make fights based on merit. Okay, like that's
right.
just not how fights are made. That's a consideration. It's a consideration. It's like I don't understand how Colby's getting the title shot, but it's like we can talk about that
Makes no
for
sense.
yeah. It is what it is. I can't imagine both of these guys are going to be insanely hungry, right? Going into this because it's like they feel jaded. They've been, denied the title shots. Like, can you imagine if whoever wins doesn't get a title shot?
It probably won't.
That's a
Yeah,
They
sad
probably
thing.
won't. They'll probably make him take one more fight before they get a title shot.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
That's
feel like what
that's
happens is
so
if you lose one fight to the champion, you have 3 fights before you have an opportunity to fight, unless it's an immediate rematch.
right.
Yeah,
I mean, look, Colby was off for what, 2 years, and then all of a sudden he gets a title shot. Like that makes no sense. Like everyone else in the welterweight
yeah,
division, they were earning their keep, and they were
correct.
keeping not only the lights on but also fans engaged. And then look, Colby's a tough motherfucker, but then I'd rather watch Bilal or Gilbert go at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they've
yeah.
earned it. Um, I see Durinho winning, but it's not going to be pretty. That guy takes a lot of shots. He has been. and his takedown defense isn't the best. Especially it's a guy who just loves to wrestle.
Mhm.
But the question here is like, how long is Burns' chin going to last? Right?
Yeah. I
This
don't.
guy can
Does
take
Bilal have
Dude,
that much power?
shots. Yeah,
Does
and
Bilal
he has.
have a ton of power? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, he hits
he
hard.
does.
But at the same time, like Burns has been fighting elite competition, at least top five for the past I don't know how many fights, right?
Yeah.
So how much
Since he
more
moved
can
up from lightweight, he's been fighting nothing but dogs.
exactly how much more can this guy take? Um,
Well, I
in
think he needs to be careful with the jab because he always gets caught with a jab.
Mm.
I mean, if you look at like the last 10 fights that Dorito had, every fight where he's been caught has been with a stiff jab from one of his opponents. Hamzat almost knocked him out with a jab. Remember when he
Yep.
dropped
Yep.
Dorito, I think in the first round with a jab. Usman, same thing, dropped him with a jab. So he leaves his hands down, and then Dorito's sort of predictable by throwing. He throws that same jab cross. It's just jab cross move, jab cross move, and
Henry
then he always fights
Hooft,
to that takedown. So it's very predictable.
right? It's a Henry
And I
Hooft
think that's what's going to get him in
mentality,
trouble one of these days,
right?
and what makes him sort of just below that championship level. But I
Mhm.
love Dorino, dude. I'm a big fan.
That guy, I mean, he's accomplished so much, and I'd
He
like to
has.
see him actually succeed. I mean, he was pitted
He beat
against
Kron.
Nate. What's that?
He beat Kron in grappling.
Yeah, he did.
He
He
beat
did.
Kron Gracie. Yeah, he submitted him. So that's a huge feat itself. I mean, look at the guy has so many accolades, so many accomplishments in his career. So
Right.
um nothing but the best of Burns. I hope he wins this fight personally because I love the guy.
Mhm.
But it's gonna be a hard one for him. I mean, Bilal's strong as shit and
Yeah.
good.
This is another one
So
where I'm happy to watch the fight. I'm happy we're getting to see it as fans. I don't have a personal favorite.
Mhm.
I kind of lean towards Gilbert mainly because I've seen the rest of Bilal's fights, okay? And I like the Luque fight, I thought Luque was going to win that one going into it. I don't think it was I don't think it was Bilal defeating him more than it was Luque just falling short of what I thought he was capable of. And I don't see Burns as one of those guys. I think he's going to bring everything to this. So I think it's just going to be an
yeah.
awesome fight. I'm just happy to be able to watch it as a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a Chicago guy, I mean, we are
Yeah,
Chicago
yeah.
guys, so
Bilal
I'm
is
sort of conflicted
Chicago.
with that also.
Very conflicted. Yeah, very
All right.
conflicted.
Speaking of conflict, we have Sterling versus Cejudo. Sterling fighting in his backyard and defending the belt for the third time, with Cejudo returning after 3 years, fighting for the belt. Where do we see this?
Yeah, I'm
Cejudo
excited
is
for this one.
smarter. Cejudo is a smarter fighter.
Yes, I agree with.
Um,
Thank you.
and his and Sterling, I feel like is very. You guys might hate me saying this. Pretty one-dimensional, and because he's so one-dimensional in his attack and his strategy for winning fights, I think at least at the championship level, like what we saw of the second Jan fight, um, I feel like Henry's been planning around that for so long that he's gonna. It's I don't know. I don't think this. I think Henry finishes him.
Oh yeah, Henry claims that he's going to finish him within the 3 rounds.
I could see that happening.
I agree. I mean, it.
But Sterling has
Honestly, dude,
surprised. So
if we look at Henry's success in the UFC, I mean, he's only lost to Demetrius Johnson, who's I wouldn't even say arguably, but I would say the best of all time
Go.
at that weight.
Go.
Yeah, I think he's an incredible fighter, probably the most talented fighter pound for pound of all time.
Right.
And then also lost by I think he had a point deduction. Well, who was he fighting? He lost by a point deduction. I forget who he fought.
Mhm.
Let me see. I want to
my
look at his
keyboard's
record.
not working, so I haven't been able to check anything. I unplugged it by accident.
Cejudo lost. I don't know if anybody's saying anything in the chat, but it was Joseph Benavidez.
Oh,
Oh,
Benavidez.
that's
That's
crazy.
Who's
right.
another one of those guys that, I mean, look at Benavidez's fight with Miguel Torres, who was also one of the best bantamweights of all time. It's like we have to consider that to be his only 2 losses, and then all of his other wins.
Yeah.
Look at his other wins: T.J. Dillashaw, uh, Marlon Moraes, like some of these other guys that at the time those were some of the biggest guys in the UFC. I mean, he's had some huge wins, probably second best after DJ in my opinion at bantamweight. But when
Olympian.
Yeah, and a fantastic wrestler, probably one of the smartest guys as far as fight IQ in the in the organization. I would say he trains some of the most successful fighters in the UFC.
Yeah,
So if we're
his
looking at
commentary is great.
yeah, if we're being objective with Henry Cejudo, I would say that he's probably the smartest guy. I know everyone says he's cringy and all that other stuff, but to be that dominant at different weight classes too. I mean, he's just been so dominant as a fighter. I think that he's got nothing but continued success in the UFC. I think when he fights Aljo, I think Aljo is going to be met with a lot of resistance. Aljo's the bigger guy, the taller guy, but I think Henry's just so smooth and so good at what he does. He's quick. He's efficient. He knows exactly what he's doing most of the time. He knows where he's at in the fight, and he knows what he needs to do to win. Whereas Aljo goes in, I think, without the same game plan. However, Aljo does also seem to be athletic, and I think he has a lot of strengths that counter Henry's strengths. So it's going to be really interesting.
Right. It's weird to me because my first introduction to Aljo was his few fights before the first Petr Yan fight. And what I liked about him was he looked like somebody that was on like 11 out of 10, go, maximum output, 3 rounds, right? And he was always attacking, constantly throwing stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool. Like it was impressive. The pace was crazy, and it was just impressive. And the Petr Yan fight, he kind of did that for a while until it didn't work, and Petr got the best of him, and obviously we know how that went, right? But what I saw happen after that was he kind of adjusted, and I don't recall the TJ fight after the second Petr Yan fight. But I mean that I don't even want to necessarily get too into it because TJ was injured, right? But he started to be a lot more passive with Petr Yan, right? Like he was being chased by Petr, like Petr was just stalking him down, right? And I think that's because he knows what Yan, or he knew what Yan was capable of, right? And he had a plan for that. Do we see Aljo being kind of hounded by Henry here? Because Aljo is very familiar with what Henry's capable of doing. I think he's going to give him a lot of respect, but I feel like that plays into Cejudo's smaller size. The fact that he's going to be kind of on the back foot, if that makes sense. Am I making any sense here? I just feel like he's unintentionally going to fall into Cejudo's plans.
Okay, wait, before we get into that, Golden Octagon is also a key staple to the community, is bidding us a good night. So I want to wish you a good night as well. Thank you for tuning in and just even being part of this conversation with us.
Yeah, have a good night, Golden Octagon. I'm familiar with our YouTube channel. I've seen you around. I think I'm subscribed. I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
Yeah,
but
same.
Yeah, please
looking forward to watching your videos, man. Have a good night, and I appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
So you're talking about how Cejudo is going to win, basically, right? And
yeah,
I believe so.
I see that Cejudo will be winning. However, it's going to come at a cost, right? We know that he trades with Ray Longo, right? His striking makes his overall grappling game composite to make sure he deploys a double leg that he goes for. But what was disappointing about that one fight that you were mentioning about Turnit rather, was that with TJ Dillashaw, he only had one functioning shoulder, right?
Right.
Yeah.
TJ dislocated it, or Aljamain was able to dislocate it, but he wasn't able to sink in a rear naked choke. He wasn't able to beat him with punches to the ground, or until the second round. So it's kind of alarming to see that sort of fight IQ right at the championship level, or even just physical testament of who he is. So yeah. I see.
It'll be interesting.
I see Cejudo winning this, not obviously through submission because we haven't seen him deploy it. I mean, he told John Jones how to submit Cyril Gane, which is amazing. But
Hmm.
I see the strikes right from
Yeah.
Cejudo.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if Cejudo stands the test of time too, because it's been 3 years. We'll
True.
see if his skills have diminished in that time period. I've seen some transformation photos of him, you know, just training in the gym and training other fighters as
Right.
opposed to training for a fight camp. I don't know if you guys have seen those pictures on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but
Yeah. Yeah.
his transformation pictures look amazing.
Yeah.
And to second that, I think it'll be interesting to see him fighting at 36 because he's 36 years old now. He stopped
Right.
fighting when he was 33. So we'll see if maybe he has that you know, small downgrade in athleticism because you know, a 33-year-old and a 30, I think it makes a difference at that age.
Careful,
33 to
roll.
36.
Careful.
I'm sorry. It makes a different. It doesn't make a difference at that age.
Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah, but I think it does.
You
I
might have
think
missed the Geo. I told Roll I was 36.
no, but I mean, if we look at it like in the MMA world, it or elite athletes, I should say, 30 would probably be someone's prime.
Yeah,
Like that's where
that's
someone
yeah.
has the highest amount of testosterone, the highest amount of you know, muscle mass, the strongest their body's probably ever going to be in the way that their body works the best. As they approach the age of 35, that's probably when their body starts to slow down a bit. So we'll see how Cejudo performs.
Yes.
He is at one of the lighter weight classes though, so he's, you know, he fought at flyweight for 5 years, and you know he's going to be going back at bantam. He fought at bantam for a year before he went to flyweight, so we'll see how he performs, dude. I'm really excited to see
Yeah.
Cejudo fight again because he's definitely one of the greats in my opinion. I think he just goes so under the radar because of his cringy comments and whatever else and his presence on social media. I think that he's looked down upon, but I really like Cejudo. I think that he's probably up there with some of the best fighters. Like I would put him up there with DJ. I think he's probably second best to DJ at that division at flyweight.
Yeah, definitely up there. But yeah, wow, there's so much we went over today.
It
And it's been
was.
2 hours.
Yeah,
How-
these are some of the best though, because we can unpack a lot and we haven't talked in a while, so it's
Yes.
nice.
yes, we had a lot to discuss, guys. And
It was fun. It was fun.
yeah, nothing but and we got to kick it off with Joe, right?
Yeah, that was incredible. That was great.
And that's someone we always talked about. I was like, man, I can't believe Joe even like DM'd us or whatever else. It was just like
Yeah.
boing over.
We're just fangirling a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a big name, especially to be, you know, big on YouTube like that too. It's
Oh, for sure. Like we
Yeah.
need to support everyone in this. It's a small
Right.
community. It's a
It
small
is a
community,
small community.
and it's not so big where everyone can be very laissez-faire about everything that's going on and it sorts itself out. It's small enough where we have to kind of watch out for each other and support everyone. And
Yes, all the
Joe's
way.
he's carrying the torch for us, and it's awesome to see that.
Right. I
And,
mean,
and
right.
one other thing I wanted to note, guys, is we should probably do another pod relatively soon for those listening, because we still have to unpack our experience from Mint Collective, which was a lot of fun. We have to talk about some of the other big fights that happened while we were out. I'll take responsibility for several weeks because I was out in Africa. I have a great excuse. Sorry about that, guys. But excited to talk about all that's happened and all that will happen. So
Yeah, definitely. We should round up soon again. I think that it goes without saying that we appreciate everyone that was including in the live. We had everyone from the Globals to our constant new members like Chris Stache, YK, along with like Golden Octagon, who is a staple within like the hobby itself. Make sure you give him a follow, along with the Globals on Instagram, but more importantly with Joe. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up here, right, guys?
yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
mistaken?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
all
I
for
appreciate everybody joining. It was a good time, and I was just glad to be able to talk to you guys again. I
It's
feel
been
like
a
we haven't
while.
talked in a while, and
It felt good.
just
It
over
felt
Instagram
good.
chats and stuff. But you know, being able to talk face to face on, you know, video is it's been awesome, guys.
It
It's been
has
great.
Thanks for everybody for
Well,
joining.
thank you everyone for tuning in.